Hi, Sheila Finkelstein with Julie Jordan Scott. Here to share some books, particularly that Julie Jordan Scott appreciates, coming out of Writing for Self-Discovery, Creating Breakthroughs. So at the top of the list in the store that you see down below are two books that I had recommended. The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and then a couple of years later she wrote Morning Page. Julia Cameron's morning pages were what introduced me years ago, I didn't even count the years, to writing and free flow writing and having breakthroughs out of that. Julie is a writer for many years, and she's here to share also her take on, if you see my face growing up, it's like a weird sound. Sorry about that. Julie's been a writer and likes to groom writers. So Julie, take over and please share your favorite book.
Thank you, Sheila. Refreshing as always. I love working with people to become better, clear communicators. Whether or not they're going to be professional writers or whether they just want to use writing, because no matter what job you have, no matter what you do, clear communication is an important part of it. So my favorite, single favorite writer who writes about writing is Natalie Goldberg, who writes similar content to Julia Cameron, but takes a slightly different approach. Like Julia Cameron, she suggests free flow writing, but she suggests filling a notebook, a 90-page notebook, in 30 days, which is basically the same as Julia Cameron, except she's not so particular about writing it all at once and writing it first thing in the morning and writing it fast. The books I'd like to recommend for you to read by Natalie Goldberg are The True Secret of Writing, which is her most recent book, and then her classic, Writing Down the Bones. I resisted her books for a long time because I don't like the titles. I didn't want to read a book called Writing Down the Bones, but when I read it, I loved it so much that when I read the final words, I cried. That tells you it's a really good book. Another great writer about writing, who's also a memoir writer and a poet and a novelist, is Anne Lamott. Anne Lamott's book about writing is called Bird by Bird, and her primary focus, or something she's remembered for, is writing your shitty first draft. So very much like Natalie Goldberg and Julia Cameron, she's all about just getting the words on the page. So I strongly suggest you read her book. She has an incredible writing voice. She's so human. She's so normal. You'll feel like you're sitting down having a cup of coffee with your neighbor. That's how her writing is. The other extremely successful writer who has a book on writing is Stephen King. His book on writing is actually half memoir, half writing how-to. I always try to keep spare copies of his book around to give to people who say, gee, I want to be a writer. I just happen to have a copy of Stephen King's on writing. Read this. It is extremely helpful, really valuable information. Finally, I wanted to share about Julia Cameron's alternative books. She covers books like Artist's Way and Finding Water, where it's like a 12-week course, a self-study course on writing, where you go through assignments and you do your morning pages and do your walks, and she has step by step by step. This is what you do, very much like you were taking a class in school. Her book, The Sound of Paper, and her book, The Right to Write, neither of those books are that way. They have shorter chapters, really easy to read, suggestions to write, but there isn't that same course-like quality to it. And The Sound of Paper, I just loved it. I felt like I was in her living room in New York because she kept writing about New York City weather. So that's my suggestion for you. Natalie Goldberg, I would start with The True Secret of Writing. Anne Lamott for her great voice. Stephen King, because he's Stephen King. I've never read his fiction, but you know, he's lived a writer's life. How inspiring is that? And then for Julia Cameron, I would supplement something like The Artist's Way, The Sound of Paper, to get a full picture of life and who she is. So Sheila, I think that covers my favorites for you today.
Great, thanks, Julie. And it makes you enroll me in checking out The Sound of Paper for myself. I certainly will do that. And those books that Julie recommended are at the top of the list in the store. At the bottom of on this page, you can find ways to contact both Julie and me. And if you haven't read the book, Kindle on Kindle, do check out Writing for Self-Discovery, Finding Breakthroughs. Thank you for being with us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Julie, for collaborating with me, for accepting my invitation. It's been fun, as always. I love you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.